Tonight's presenter is Jeffrey Amelse. I'm probably going to say that wrong, and I apologize. Jeffrey has
Amelse.
a P.
So,
Amelse.
so
Jeffrey has a PhD from Northwestern University in chemical engineering and has been an ESCONI member for almost 3 decades. Jeffrey is accomplished. Now, I have to admit, I did not write this next part. I went and I researched Jeffrey online, and I'm in awe. So I'm just going to read you what others have written about him because it's pretty impressive. Jeffrey is an
on bathroom walls.
accomplished chemical engineer, researcher, and educator with a distinguished career spanning academia and industry. He earned his PhD in chemical engineering from Northwestern University and went on to make significant contributions to catalysis, molecular sieves, petrochemical process design, and carbon sequestration technologies. For more than 30 years at BP Amoco Chemical Company, he played a pivotal role in developing and commercializing advanced paras okay
Paraxylene.
paraxylene paraxylene technologies, molecular sieve catalysis, and innovative process designs that remain influential in the petrochemical section. He is recognized as an expert in molecular sieve synthesis and characterization, and his patents include paraxylene recovery, catalysis design, refrigeration systems, and biomass conversion. Following his industrial career, he transitioned to academia as an invited teaching professor at the University of Evora in Portugal, where he continued to shape the future of energy, catalysis, and sustainability through teaching and research. Currently, he pioneers low-cost natural methods for carbon sequestration through teaching and research. His professional legacy, and how many of us have a professional legacy, reflects a rare blend of industrial leadership, academic excellence, and innovation. So I was very impressed. Jeffrey is truly a Renaissance man, as tonight's presentation will demonstrate. He could have easily talked tonight about carbon sequestration, trilobites, or plant fossils from Poland and Czechoslovakia. But tonight, Jeffrey is going to take us on an archaeological tour through Portugal. Jeffrey, the stage is yours.
Okay. Can you see the slides?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're in desktop, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Okay. So once again, I severely apologize for getting the date wrong. So tell you, I have so much trouble with my phone, not getting dates right. Um, so any rate, gave the topic and we'll just jump right in then. Um, so we'll kind of step through time in Portugal, going all the way back. As Kathleen said, I collect trilobites. Was very interested to find that they're found in Portugal. So we'll show you those. We'll show you some dinosaur prints. Uh, show you rock art at Villanova de Foscoa. Some dates back as far as 40,000 years ago. We'll take a look at the prehistoric Almendres cromlechs, which are near Evora, city of Evora. They date back to the 4th to 6th century BC, and some of the stones there are said to be older than Stonehenge. It's a Stonehenge type religious site set in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're driving half an hour down a dirt road to get to this thing, and it's in the middle now of a cork tree plantation. Then we'll take a look at dolmens. These are prehistoric burial sites from the Neolithic and Chalcolithic period. They date back to roughly 4,800 to 2000 BC. We'll look at Celtic villages. The Celts were in Portugal from around 900 BC to 100 CE, and then the Romans uh, came in and took over some of their villages. Um, so we'll look separately at a Roman village in the town of Conabriga, which is maybe a half an hour outside the famous religious site of Fatima. We'll look at castles. Um, there are, I forget how many castles, several hundred of them spread across Portugal, and had an opportunity to visit a lot of them and climb up on them. And over the 2 years that I spent in Portugal, that was very enlightening because I was able to study them and see how they were built and maintained. We'll take a look at some churches, some as old as 1,000 years. We'll look at the earthquake that leveled Lisbon in 1755 AD. This year, Lisbon has experienced a number of earthquakes again, and like San Francisco, they're said to be set for the big one. And then we'll take a look at a few cities, including Evora, where the university was that I was at, Coimbra, and another very famous city in Porto. Okay, so let's start out with the trilobites then. It's near um, Aruca Geopark, which itself is very, very interesting. So this geopark is famous for having these stairs that go down um, from the top of a mountain down to a river. It's probably like 1,500 stairs or so. And you get down there, and fortunately, there's a very robust taxi industry to bring you back up, so you don't have to walk up all those stairs. Um, but at any rate, this kind of shows you the country that you're in. You can see you're pretty high up. And driving near Aruca, I came across a trilobite museum. It's run by a guy and his son. And it was in a shale quarry where the shale had been used historically for roofs in Portugal, dating all the way back to the Middle Ages. Um, so, so again, this picture on the left gives you an idea how high up we are, probably 1,000, 1,500 feet or so at this point. This is part of the rejected shale that wasn't used for roofing. And then over on the right, you can see some of the trilobites that were found when they broke the shale open. And these trilobites measure up to over 3 foot long. So they're said to be some of the largest in the world. Although you guys are the experts, so somebody may challenge that. So, um, and um, just driving around this area, you take a road, and here's this sign pointing up, trilobites. So, so they're all over the place in this region. Okay, so we'll step forward in time to the dinosaur area um, and take a look at some dinosaur prints in two different areas. Um, so first, to set the scene on this, where they are found is near what where some of the site that I'm going to show you next, at least, is found. I'll show you two sites. Is near the town of Cabo Especial. This was a pilgrimage site dating back to about the 1500s. So people used to walk by foot from Lisbon to this site. So it's about an hour and a half drive by car. Okay, but the Portuguese are very, very famous for making these pilgrimage sites. In fact, they go up to the very famous site just north of Portugal and Spain. Um, and you'd be driving along the road and you see all these pilgrims on foot. And the Portuguese are known for welcoming them into their home, as these pilgrims are moving up north. But this one is just south of Lisbon, and you can see the church that was built in the 1500s. And at the time, it was kind of a monastery. So these are the barracks for the monks. Um, if you look straight behind this, you'll be looking out at the Atlantic Ocean. Um, and you go behind this church and off to the left, you've got a steep cliff. And let's see, I don't know if I can move this out of the way here, but let's see, try it. Um, and the other thing about Portugal, again, as I'm roaming around these castles, um, you can be there by yourself. I've been at this site by myself in the middle of the summer, nobody around, no safety guardrails. So you can walk right up to the edge of this cliff with about 1,000-foot drop down to the Atlantic Ocean. So here's a picture of an old um, Muslim building. So part of Portugal's history was the invasion of um, of the Muslims from Africa. So you'll see their sites spread around Europe, and in fact, we'll see a Muslim a castle from the Muslim period. So, at any rate, that's looking off to the left. You look off to the right, and this is the scene you see. Um, so I'm literally standing up to the right of the church and took this photo. There's a road that comes down here, and one set of dinosaur prints, very famous, are found um, along this wall. So you can see the geological uplift over time from millions of years of earthquakes, et cetera, that moved the landscape. But so these are difficult to see by foot, but you can take the trip all the way down. But nearby, very close to that town, let's see. Oops, I might have gotten these out of order. So nearby, in the town of Cabo Especial, you'll see that um, they had dug up this panel, and it's set up for tourists here. And this shows some of the dinosaur prints that were found in this area. So then going backwards, here's another site with dinosaur prints. This is about 45 minutes northeast of Fatima. So Fatima is maybe hour and 45 minutes the way I drive, 2 hours for the normal person away from Lisbon. And it's about 45 minutes northeast of Fatima. So they came across dinosaur prints. They set up a walking area around them where you can walk through this area, and here are some pictures that I took of those prints. So um, pretty extensive site. So this is maybe 2-3 times the size of a football field that they have now excavated. And again, you can see from the picture, there's nobody else around. So you got the whole place to yourself. Okay, so moving forward in time then through the glacial age, you go up to uh, an area that's the highest in Portugal. I think it's let's see, maybe 13,000 feet. So I'm living near the ocean in the town of Evora. The 2 years that I was there, we never saw snow, never got below freezing. It did this year, probably as a result of global warming, which has really whacked out the weather everywhere, as you know. Um, but this is up near the highest point in the country where um, this was about maybe 2.5 hours away from where I was living. So I'm near the coast where they never get snow, never went below freezing. And you're up at the highest mountain where they have a ski lift in the winter, and you can go skiing in just 2 hours from the ocean. So, but here you come across this plaque that gives a geological explanation of the unusual rock formations that you'll see up there. So this is a glacial mountain, very, very different scenery from the Rocky Mountains. I'll just show you some pictures in the next slide. So, so you got these huge rocks that were created by um, the glacials moving in um, and moving out and dissolving some of the earth around these rock formations. Okay, so again, you're up at the highest point. You can get an idea of again how high up you are by looking out at the scenery around there. Um, so, being a glacial area, you get these glacial lakes, very, very pretty, and you never know what you run into in Portugal. So here's a Hare Krishna guy taking a picture. Uh, we let him take his pictures and then stood up and took our pictures. And this is one of the pictures I took from where he was standing. So again, this is the highest point in Portugal. They have a couple of observatories up here. Um, this is actually from the drive up in spring, so you can see that the mountains are still covered with snow at this point. I think this was taken around March or so. Um, so down the road from this highest point, the Portuguese, there are a couple sites where the very, very religious country, Catholic, and they carved this monument into the stones in that area that show the Blessed Virgin Mary. And to give you an idea of the size, here's a person standing down here. Okay, so now we're up to only 40,000 years ago, and we'll take a look at rock art and at Foscoa. Um, they have a museum um, that exhibits, is a fantastic exhibit. I mean, it's probably the size of the Art Institute. Very unusual design. You drive up to it, it looks like a container. Uh, and then you walk down into the museum, and they have an incredible exhibit that show rock art. They have reproduced some of the panels that were left in the area inside the museum, so you don't have to visit them all. If you want to go visit them, you can arrange a tour through the museum. You drive about 30 miles, and at that point, you are 30 miles from the border with Spain, out to a little town. You end up at a gift shop where this little old lady is just selling olives and almonds from the area. Um, and you get on a Jeep, and it's about a 20, 30-minute ride. You're driving through beautiful um, almond tree area, looking down at vineyards. This particular area was famous for the development of vertical vineyards. And you come across the rock art. So, and there's rock art at, I think, about 6 or 7 different sites in this area. Some of them are on private land, but you can arrange tours. I have the person number of one of the tour guides, so I can call him up and arrange to visit some of the sites that are on private land. Okay, so again, very unusual looking building. Um, this is the back of it. Um, and you walk out the back, and this is one of my favorite spots in the country. Okay, they set up a couple of chairs, um, and you are overlooking the confluence of 3 rivers. So it's the end of the Douro River, which is very, very famous um, for the wine growing. You can see still vineyards everywhere. So the British came into Portugal in the late 1800s, and they set up grape export from this region, which is about 2.5 hours from Porto, down the Douro River. They'd send the grapes um, and do the finishing of the wine in Porto. So Porto gets its name from port wine. So this region is extremely famous for the port wines. So for us on a Sunday afternoon, we could go up into the wine growing region, be at the Sandeman Vineyard. So if you guys are port drinkers, you probably heard of the Sandeman, very, very famous port wine. And you'll be on one side of the river. Um, and on the other side, you'll be looking at the vineyard, very famous for um, geez, her name escapes me now, but it's one of the science fiction movies. So again, headquartered in the UK. Let's see, what was her name? Um, Laura Croft, Tomb Raiders. So you'd be on one side of the river looking across. You see the Croft Vineyard sign. But at any rate, here we come up close to some of some of the rock art, and so you pay your €10. You drive a half an hour through this beautiful country. I mean, this is my favorite spot. Again, I've been there when there is nobody there. You got the whole place yourself. So one thing about Portugal, if you go there to visit, a lot of people will just visit Lisbon. There is so much more to that country outside of Lisbon, and you really need a car, to get to this area. It's pretty remote. They don't even have tour buses coming to this area out of Porto, so you got to drive there yourself. Okay, but you drive through the vineyards, 20, 30 minutes. You're beautiful scenery, looking out at almond trees and the vineyards. You can, you can see how high up you are, but you can see that the vineyards are planted all along the edge of the river here. And you come upon the rock art. So, and here was one of our tour guides. You get right up to him. Okay. I mean, you're standing a foot away from these things. And she's pointing out some of the rock art, again, that goes back to 40,000 years. Very, very interesting. So this area where this is at, again, is about 30 miles or about 30 minutes away from the museum by car. You're still very, very high up in the mountains. There's a small river that runs through it. Portugal, I believe, sets the record for the number of miles of rivers per square mile of any country on Earth. because of the very, very hilly landscape. It rains, the water comes down, you get all these rivers. Okay. Um, so, so at this particular site, you're looking at the rock art here. What you can't see is if you step back from this rock, turn around, there is a small river there. And on the other side of that river, you see panels like this that have similar designs. So this one we'll take a little closer look on the next slide. But it's got depictions of um, uh, sheep and goats, some of which are extinct at this point. On the other side, you see the same types of panels, and the theory is again that this was a particular religious site, and it was mirrored on the other side of the river. So you find similar panels on the other side of this little river. But let's zoom in. To one particular panel. Um, so, so this is the panel as you see it. A little difficult to see here. So what I've done is outline um, uh, the particular design, and this particular design is of a horse, and you see three different heads to the horse. And the theory is by the Portuguese scholars, and you can believe it or not, is that this is the first attempt at a motion picture. So it shows the body of the horse over here, and his head starts to move from fully upright to about level to down where he would be getting some water out of the river. So again, it's about 6 different sites in this particular area, all within maybe 20, 30 miles of each other and outlined inside the museum. Um, so you go in the museum, and I haven't, uh, don't think we have time to show you all the pictures inside the museum. By the way, I took 13,000 pictures in the 2.5 years that I was in Portugal. I mean, the place is just so photogenic. Every weekend we get in the car. I put 12,000 kilometers on this Volkswagen that I bought in the 2 years that I was there, because we go off every weekend to a different interesting site. But inside the museum, you have, they found these small little panels in the area. And these things are, maybe about the size of your fist. And so this is a line drawing. You can actually see the panels. So you can see that there are some lights shining down on this. I took a picture of the line drawing that sat next to the panel, the actual panel, which again is about the size of a fist. Um, and You see um, similar line drawings, rock art in throughout the Iberian Peninsula into Spain. Um, and they have some very, very similar animals. So the thought was that these prehistoric peoples carried these little panels about the size of a fist, and that's how they would teach people in the different areas to do the line drawings on the rocks. So by the way, I mean, you know, the place Portugal is just so incredible. So there's another site that I haven't shown you some pictures of. They uncovered a cave similar to the caves in Spain. Um, and this thing was just opened up in the 70s, just discovered in the 70s. So Portugal was locked down for recent history under a dictator, and it was, severe suppression of the local people. If you were caught disparaging the emperor to your neighbor, you were thrown in jail. So Portugal was very, very locked down for that period of time, and it is now just opening up. So again, in the 70s, they came across a cave with cave art, that is actually colored like it is in France. Um, and you know, uh, you pay €2 to get in this thing. Uh, you have to call ahead of time because again, you're in there with maybe half a dozen people, and that's it. So, okay, so now we're up to the 4th to 6th century BC, and these are the prehistoric. The Portuguese call these Almendres, Cromlechs. This is near the town of Evora. Evora is a very famous town. The Romans, were there. They built a Colosseum. There's a museum of Roman artifacts and Celtic artifacts in the town of Evora. It's a pretty good sized town at this point, but this thing is out in the middle of nowhere. So again, take a look at at the distance. So again, you're pretty far up. Um, maybe 1,500, 2,000 feet above sea level. And you've got all these stones aligned with the stars, um, like Stonehenge. So here's, a fallback. But this again, this area is probably about the size of a football field. Um, and here's a panel, that shows you what you're looking at. You can see how many of these stones are in this particular area, by the dots here. And they show some of the ones that you can still see the Celtic carvings on. Um, we had a presenter from down in Carbondale a number of months ago who specialized in photographing ancient rock art, and this site is similar. So these things are centuries old. They're pretty well worn. So you got to come here at the right time of day to be able to see these. And I have been here by myself. So my wife she's from Rhode Island. Her brother was extremely ill. So she was back in the States taking care of him. I'm here by myself. Nobody else there. Nobody else there. Okay. 30 miles from a very busy town of Evora. And I've been there, I don't know how many times. So here I am at the end of the day, sun's going down, and was able to be able to see, um, some of the Celtic carvings on these stones. Okay, so now we're up to 5,000 to 4,000 BC. So that was a little over 6 to 8,000 years ago. We're going to take a look at dolmens. So that's the Portuguese name for these things. These are prehistoric burial sites, and they are scattered throughout the country. I think there's about 600 of them throughout the country, but I'll show you some from one particular um, famous town for them called Carregal de Sal. Um, and they vary in size. So there, I think, are about 6 of them in this particular area. Again, you can see how isolated we are. So you got to come down a road. Actually, the road up to these isn't too bad. I'll show you the big one where I almost got the car stuck going down this road. So that's how, primitive this area is. Um, and they vary in size. So this is so-called Orca 1 and Orca 2. Though Amille is the area where these things are found. This one is maybe only about 3 foot high. So what these uh, prehistory people would do would take slabs of granite, stand them upright, um, bury their people underneath, the important people, the chieftains, et cetera, et cetera. And then they'd lay a stone on top. And some of them they would then bury with dirt. We'll see one coming up in a couple slides. So this is the largest one in the area, not the largest one in the country. To give you an idea of its size, here's my wife. Um, so this guy was really important, apparently, high level chieftain. Um, and again, she's off in the US. I'm here visiting this by myself, nobody else around. And this is a prehistoric burial site, so I was able to crawl inside it and play dead myself. Um, and interestingly, again, this is the biggest one in this area, but maybe 50, 100 yards away from it at the entrance to this area, you see this prehistoric carving on a stone, that sort of announces, must have been announcing the ruler there, but I was unable to read it, but I think it probably said something like "Eat it, Joe's." And they have panels that show you, the theory of how they were constructed. So like Stonehenge, we're not completely certain. These are huge, heavy rocks, and the theory is that they, you know, drag them along, rolled them on logs, used ropes to stand them up, um, and then laid a stone on top. And some of them were then covered with dirt to keep the animals away from uh, the buried corpses. And we'll see an example of that. I think the next slide. Yep. So this is a different area. Um, this one was probably only 50 minutes from me, where we were living. And this one um, was, again, this one had been covered with dirt, and consequently, they only discovered it in 1956. But again, this one dates back to 4000 to 3600 BC. And this one is so well preserved because it was mounded with dirt, that you could crawl in there. So to visit this one, there's a small museum of Celtic and Roman artifacts that were found in the area. You go to that museum, you got people sitting behind desks doing nothing in the museum. I'm the only one there by myself. The first time I visited the museum, I didn't know about this. They said, "Come back, we'll give you a tour of this." So, so I get a private tour. This guy drives me up to this thing in his BMW, and we have to crawl in. But this one is so well preserved, you can actually see um, the drawings on the stones that were set up. And it's believed that most of those burial sites had similar drawings on the inside. But of course, they've been the ones that aren't covered have been worn away. Okay, again, there's probably 600 of these things all over the place. Here's one of the largest in the country. So this one, they put a tarp over to prevent further erosion. But to give you an idea of the size of this one, here I am standing in front of it. Um, so, so again, that was at a different site, but going back to Carregal do Sal, um, the prehistoric people were there. Um, the Celts were there. We'll see in a minute. The Romans were there. Here are three Roman burial sites, and you find these throughout the country. Some of them are very near some of the famous castles. There's another area I didn't include pictures here, but there's a famous area where you go up and people, again, these large stones that were carved out by the glaciers. People built homes right into the rocks up there, and you'll find Roman burial sites up there. So people have occupied that area for centuries. In that same area, you find a Celtic writing stone. So this one again is in Carregal do Sal. Um, Not protected, so over the centuries, it's been covered with lichen. So you can just barely make out some of the Celtic symbols that were carved into this one. In a different area completely, out in the middle of nowhere, you are walking down a small path. You almost had to have a machete with you to get through the brush to get to this thing. But out in the middle of nowhere is this Celtic writing stone. And they have now tried to protect it from further weathering. But here's a close-up of some of the Celtic drawings on this particular stone. So, so again, pull up. There's an area probably about maybe um, 400 yards away from this. You got to walk through the forest to get to it. That's got enough room for two cars. Again, wife is in the U.S. taking care of her brother. I'm here by myself. Nobody else around. Um, so I wanted to show you another one of my favorite sites. So we would come up here for a weekend. This is about 2 hours drive away from the town we're living in. Um, Up in the mountains, so you are up 1,500, you know, more than that. I don't know, you're probably up 10,000 feet at this point, and you come across this little town that's completely made. The houses are all made of the local rocks and local shale on the roofs. Ex Extremely picturesque town. So there is a modern hotel now, which is where I stood when I took this photo, looking down at the town. And, again, we could go up there for a weekend because we're only about 2 hours away. To get there, you have to come up a winding mountain road. Again, Portuguese, not into safety, no guardrails. Um, and this is taken at a stop, along that road as you're going up here. And the reason I put this up is to show you that Portugal very recently, probably again as a result of global warming, has been struck by wildfires. When we arrived in 2017, there was a very bad one where so I'm standing along the road at the bottom of this picture on the far left, taking a picture, looking down, and you can see the scorched trees. And along this particular road, people were trapped by the fire because you still go up maybe another 500 feet. There are windmills up there. So the fire came up the mountain and scorched all the trees. And that picturesque town, this is what it looked like when I was there taking a picture. Um, and unfortunately, that whole area was struck by another wildfire just this year. And you can see, unfortunately, the whole area around it was scorched. But over 100 people died along this road trying to get out of the area. Just piled up, and the fire came over them and kept going up. Okay, so now we'll go to Celtic Iberian settlement dating back 2,500 years. Um, Actually older than that. So it was primarily occupied from the 6th century BC by the Celts all the way up to the Romans around 1000 AD. Um, so this site is absolutely huge, occupies 60 acres, and there are remnants of the village, incredibly well preserved. There are roads that you can walk down, as we'll see. Um, just a huge site excavated by a famous archaeologist he was a wealthy guy. He had a mansion in a neighboring town, maybe 30 miles away, where they have a museum where he's pulled some of the artifacts, both from the Celts and the Romans out of this area. And there's a whole society that I belong to. I have membership, and they have seminars just like ESCONI does once a month. Okay, so this shows you this area. So again, you can look out and see how high up you are at this point. Um, and the area has both remnants of round homes. So the Celts built round homes, and the Romans, when they came in, they were square heads. So you can tell the Roman runes from the Celtic runes. Um, so here are some still pretty well preserved structures. Obviously, the roofs have been, they were originally just thatch roofs, so they've been reconstructed. But absolutely enormous site. You can see a little bit of it here, but this was the big meeting place for the Celts, where they had their tribal meetings. Um, and again, the Romans came in, so a huge site, 36 acres. You walk down one road and you come across the remnants of a Roman bath. Um, and just to give you an idea of the road structure here, so this is actually a picture, zoomed out, where you could the road leading up to that Celtic meeting place, and those Celtic villages are up the road here. But I zoomed in to show you, again, how sophisticated the Romans were. They built drainage ditches along the road, so that the roads would drain. And just unbelievable sight. I mean, the first time I went there, I was so moved. I mean, and again, um, this site's maybe a little more popular, so you'd be there in a day where maybe there's 12 people walking around. Um, Celtic villages all across the country. Here's another one of my favorites. This one is north of Porto, just about 60 miles north. And um, uh, these were, you could see some of the ruins and some of the reconstructed structures. Very pretty area. And as I said, Portuguese is a very religious town, so they came in and built a church. Um, Standing at this church, you're looking out at the Pacific Ocean. I mean, the Atlantic Ocean. So that was the Celts. So like I said, the Romans moved in to that area. Um, there are actually Roman coins that were found there from the time of Augustus. I'm a coin collector too, so I have a couple of Augustus's coins of the type that were found in that area. So now we're going to take a look at the Romans coming through this entire area, and you're right on the border. of Portugal, and going north, there is a little strip of Spain that goes up above Portugal. So you're right at the border of Spain and Portugal. Again, you're, I don't know, 10, 15,000 feet up, overlooking a river. You get to the border. There was a border crossing there when all the countries were separate. So, and you had to show your passport to go from Portugal into Spain. Now they're all part of the EU. So the border is not used anymore. But you come to the border, and here's where the border used to be. And there's a snack shop here. And inside the snack shop, the guys that own this thing will see the the actual border in Roman times was up the road, maybe another only 5 to 10 miles. Okay, so this is the border in in modern times. Um, but the Romans came through there and they set up mileposts dedicated to all the rulers that came through here. And the rulers date all the way back to Caesar. At the bottom, you can't see it here, but all the stones that these guys moved into their little snack shop, have the names of the rulers of the particular milestones. So the ones they moved inside are still pretty well preserved, so you can read, the inscriptions, the rulers that came through on these mileposts, and there are rulers, that again dated from Augustus, Caesar. Everybody came there and put their mileposts right up at the border. Um, so again, you're probably 10, 15,000 miles up, and that is what led to the separation of Portugal from Spain, because the Spanish had a very hard time getting over this mountain to attack Portugal. Okay, so again, they used these granite pillars to mark distances. These were mileposts, measured in thousands of paces or miles, and they honored the reigning emperor at the time. So this is one of the best preserved stretches of roads that went, along a trade route. So why they picked this area? It was the highest area in the region here, I guess. Along this trade route, and they all put up their mileposts. Um, and some of them, like I said, you can still read the Latin epigraphs on them. Um, and they left some of them out. So you know, up the road a couple miles. Actually, to get to here, you go up above the tree lines, so that's how high up you are at this point. And some of them were left. Some of them were moved into the snack shop. So, but this was apparently a military road that connected two towns in what is now Portugal and Spain. Okay, so get away from the Celts and go to Roman ruins, where it's Roman entirely. No Celts at this particular site. It's a town called Conabriga. Again, it's about 45 minutes outside of Fatima. Fatima, about 2 hours away from Lisbon. This area was maybe an hour and a half from where we lived. We lived north. So, so again, I could drive there on a Saturday afternoon. Um, and this is, they have a covered area here, with, this is apparently one of the wealthy dude's houses, and you can see the Roman tile work on the floor. And it's, again, an extensive area. This was an entire Roman city at the time. They speculate that it probably housed maybe 10,000 people at one time. So here's a picture outside, walking around. There's an amphitheater here. I didn't show you a picture of that. Um, so here's a picture again of a Roman bath. So this was the uh, region where they would put the coals in to heat the water for the Roman bath, and the Romans would crawl underneath this arch and sit there and sweat away. So, so again, just showing you a little bit more of the site. Um, I mean, there was an entrance to the city. Uh, it's again pretty huge area, pretty well preserved. Okay, so now we really jump ahead to the year 1755, and this was the big earthquake that took down Lisbon, and tens of thousands of people died. Um, and for the geologists, had to throw in some geology stuff. This is an ESCONI talk. So here's a map of Portugal. Here's Lisbon, and here's Spain, and showing you the fault lines in the area. So, and one of them runs right through Lisbon. Um, and in Lisbon itself, there is a tile museum. Um, when the people, uh, the um, but I tell you, it's hell getting old. So the mind is starting to go. What the name of the um, oh, the Moors, when they came through the area, they brought tiles with them, as we will see. So they introduced tile work to Portugal. Portugal loved it. They tiled all their buildings, and you name it. But there's a museum that has a mural that probably is 30, 40 feet long. And fortunately, it was done before the earthquake, so it can show, it gives you a scene of the town before the earthquake. Here's a painting after the earthquake. Again, tens of thousands, I think maybe as high as 100,000 people died. Um, so Lisbon itself is a town of, I think, 7 hills. So pretty strenuous going around Lisbon on foot. But there are cable cars that can take you up. There is a very famous uh, elevator that you can take that was designed by one of the students of um, so one of the famous architect. Oh, the guy who did the Eiffel Tower. So you take that up, and so you're maybe again 1,000 feet overlooking the lower part of Lisbon. And here's the remnants of a church from that has not been reconstructed from that 1755 earthquake. So, so a little bit, zoom in, showing you the town of Lisbon before the 1755 earthquake, and the painting that shows the destruction of that earthquake. Okay, so moving on to castles and palaces. So again, one of the things that I was so fortunate to live there for a couple of years is I could get in my car and visit some of the castles. There are several hundred castles around the region, and you could go up them. And again, you're in there by yourself in some of these things, but really study them and get a good feeling for uh, what the feudal life was like. Okay, so so we'll take a look at one of the famous castles. This is the town of Tomar, which is a Knights of Templar complex. It was founded in 1160, and they continue to add on to it up into the 1500s. So here's a picture of the original Knights of Templar castle within this big, what is now a pretty big complex. Um, and again, it was expanded. They put a convent up here, so this shows you some of the nuns' barracks. Um, and they expanded it into the Gothic period. Very beautiful to go up here and take a look at this Gothic structure. And again, everything, everything is an hour and a half away from where we're living. Takes me longer to get downtown, tell you. So this is inside the church in Tomar. Incredible murals going through the arch as you enter into the church. Here's a picture. You know, you can see the murals all around it. Um, so this is mid 10th century. This is the castle at Guimarães. This was where the decisive battle between the Portuguese and the Spaniards took place. And you know, again, you can go up inside this castle and roam around without a whole lot of people. You step back from this castle, and there's another palace that dates to the 1500s that you can go and tour. Again, huge place. Walk around, museum inside it. So again, we're on the topic of castles. This is the famous, I call it the fairy castle of Peña, near the town of Sintra. You can see how high up you are again. So the town is pretty far down below. Um, you can park in the town, eat dinner. Portuguese, uh, when they ask you how you like Portugal, and they say, "Oh, the food, the food." So to me, Portuguese food is pretty bland. They eat a lot of fish, salted cod. You go into a grocery store, and their big one inside this mall had maybe 50 yards of salted cod of different varieties. So these guys are really into cod, and it's Jeff's law of economics, which means how much do you want to pay for something? There will be somebody there to take it away from you. So you can pay, you know, €7 for a piece of cod. You can pay €100 for a piece of cod. So but this is the famous fairy castle of Peña. This is just outside of Lisbon, maybe a half an hour. Um, and you know, again, built in the late 1800s. So again, one of the summer getaways for the time the ruler, and a couple of shots of the castle. Some shots inside. So this one does get a lot of traffic from people that only come into Lisbon because you can, you know, again, you're a half an hour away by car. There's a train that goes here outside of Lisbon. So this is a very popular tourist site. So this one is a little more heavily populated. Um, by the way, Sintra is where Madonna currently has a residence. So it was an extremely wealthy area. It's still a wealthy area, you know, a lot of Elizabethan wealth settled in this area. So there are huge mansions as you're coming up the road towards this castle. Um, so you go up the road a couple hundred yards. You can walk up here. Here's a Moor castle. So again, the Moors came in the 8th and 9th centuries, and they built a Moor castle. And you can go and climb around this thing. And again, since Sintra is such a popular area, you know, you can get up there. So as a local, uh, I knew how to drive up the road, and you go beyond the castles and there's a parking area. So you don't need to take the taxi up. I just show you another castle. This is Evora um, outside the famous city of Evora. This was started in the 1100s. You can still see a Moor temple nearby looking down. But I just put this one up because it is such an unusual architecture for a castle. There are actually four of these round structures, that are all tied together. This is Busaso. Um, this was 45 minutes from us. Okay. This area not only has a palace, a more modern day palace, probably dating from 15, 1600s, but it also has a forest that was maintained by the monks, and it was really like an arboretum. And they even brought in some California redwoods that they still have. They still mark the spot of one of the oldest trees in the area that dates back, I think, to I mean, it's not in good shape, obviously, but because it's been there since about the 1200s. So you walk around paths, and they have these structures as you're walking along, and inside these structures will be scenes, life-size statues of scenes from the Passion. Okay. Couple different depictions. You go up the road. This is the highest point, and there's a little uh, sort of observatory up here, uh, very close to the town um, where there is an underground spring that provides drinking water, very pure water. Coming up, you get the locals come up there with their jugs, and you can pull water for free, or you can spend €2 on a bottle of this stuff in town. Okay, so like I said, Portuguese very into tiles. So this was a very wealthy um, um, uh, uh, palace of the Marquis de Fonteira, just outside of Lisbon. So again, most of the tourists don't even know about this spot. You can take a cab, uh, maybe 20, 30 minutes outside of Lisbon to visit this place, but you can see the elaborate tile work. The Portuguese are really into elaborate tile work. Um, Here's a picture of the main mansion. This is still privately owned by the descendants of the Marquis Frontera. So they live in this mansion. Part of it you can visit, part of it's private residence still. Um, so along this wall, there's a pond with some statues. Okay, so again, I hope I haven't put the geologists to sleep. So if you are, wake up. So we're going to talk a little bit about geology, and we're going to talk about the town of Nazare, home of 100-foot wave surfing championships. Everything was an hour, 2 hours away from me. This is 45 minutes away from where I lived. It's the home of 100-foot wave surfing championships, and you can go out and Google surfing at Nazare, and you'll see some videos of these nuts trying to surf these humongous waves. Um, so here's a site. Again, you're pretty high up above the ocean, so showing some of those waves. This one crashed. Um, there was 18th century fort at the end of the road. When I first came there in 2017, you could drive up to this. Now the parking is um, maybe a couple 100 meters to a mile away from this. Now you got to walk down to it. And of course, here's the sign for Big Wave Surfing Championships. You walk down the road to the castle, and here's a surfing dude, uh, with a deer head, and give you an idea of the size of it. Here's my wife standing next to it. Okay, so geology guys, wake up. So this is how Nazare gets these huge 100-foot waves. Um, Again, this is along one of the fault lines, and there is a canyon that comes through the ocean, um, and starts pretty far back. So at this point, the ocean is 4,000 meters deep. As you get closer, you only get up to um, um, about 1,000 feet or so, or maybe a couple hundred feet. But there's a crack here developed, by the earthquakes of millions of years ago, that comes very, very close to shore at Nazare. So only about 100 meters offshore, the water is still about 1,000 foot deep. Okay. Yeah. And now the wind is blowing the water across the Atlantic Ocean, and it hits this canyon, and it starts to funnel through the canyon. And what happens is you'll get waves on both sides of the canyon coming into Nazare, and they will fold upon themselves and develop these 100-foot waves. Okay, so again, here's a picture of the castle, and you can see, this was on a relatively calm day. Um, here's You can just barely see the surfer dude here on one of these huge waves. This was one of the more fierce times where you can see the size of the waves in relation to this 18th century fort. Here's a picture I took further out that shows where you actually, this is how far out you got to start walking down to this structure, so you can see, how far up you are. So when I first went there in 2017, um, you could walk from behind this castle down to the rocks. And like I said, Portuguese aren't into safety. So I'd go down this path. You could go all the way down to the rocks. And there's this little rope um, thing that's the only thing that keeps you from falling off into the ocean. Comes up about your knees. And we were down at Nazare one day, and I was only supposed to be there for 6 months, so I didn't bother to learn Portuguese, and we didn't watch the local news. And so we're down there one day with my wife, and um, 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 we get a call from her friend, and she said, "Where are you?" So we're down in Nazare. She said, "Get the hell out of there, because there's a hurricane that was coming." And sure enough, we get back in the car. We just get out of the area, and it's just pelting rain. And that rain took down a bunch of trees in Busaso. And that area was closed for, I think, about 6 months. So a couple churches, and we should be finishing up pretty soon. Sorry, I've gone so long. Um, so here's a church. This is a um, um, a church of the um, let's see. This was the Visigoths. So okay, so this was originally a Visigoth church, but it had a Roman style aqueduct coming into it. It's a small aqueduct, maybe only about a foot wide. Um, and you can see that they put a structure over it. It's been hit by a couple storms, so it's in pretty bad shape. And I went in, nobody around, nobody around. This is out in the middle now of a farmer's field. In fact, this structure was used to house grain by the farmer back in up to the 1800s. It's now a historic site. So I crawled in underneath the structure, and you could see some of the Visigoth structures inside. Um, so here's another Visigoth church. This is actually a little bit over the border into Spain. Extremely well preserved Visigoth church, probably one of the best preserved Visigoth churches in the world. Um, there's a parking lot. You can't walk in this, you can't drive in this town. So there's a parking lot there, and there's a whole bunch of buses. And I'm wondering what the heck's going on. I thought, well, it must be a lot of tourists. No, no tourists. There was a funeral for one of the big dudes in the area. Um, and I walked up to the church and it's closed. So it's like, oh man, I drove all this way. Well, all this way means 2.5 hours. Um, and so I go back down and I'm talking to some of the locals, and she said, "Oh, one of the people said, oh, you want to see the church? Let me go get the curator." So she lets me in this thing. I get a private tour of this church, and you can see still some of the Visigoth murals. And here's a picture of that lovely lady that let me in the church. So um, this is a chapel in the town of Braga. Um, More like from the 13, 1400s. This is privately owned. How would you like to have your own 13th century church? And inside, shows you some of the murals and statues. So there was a depiction of people standing over the body of Jesus. And here's a picture of the altar, with some of the artwork inside. Um, so again, back to tiles, tiles, tiles everywhere. Here's a church in Porto. Uh, um, Actually, this one's in Porto. I forget where this one was. So there's so many tile churches all over the country. There was one within the town that we lived in that looked like this. Um, so So again, the Moors were the ones who brought tiles and geometry. So you go into a museum um, in the town of Braga, and you'll see that the Moors brought these tiles, and they brought teaching tiles to teach geometry. So actually, the Moors were pretty far advanced in geometry and astrology. I had to show you a picture of Fatima. Of course, this was, um, 1900s Fatima. Supposedly the Virgin Mary visited these three small children, and they built this church as a memorial to it. And outside, they have this area where they burn these candles, and the smoke, acrid smoke, is just incredible trying to get up to it. This is a church called Bathala, probably 45 minutes outside of Lisbon, but not a tourist spot, so you got to take a car to see it. Um, Very, very large Gothic type of church, with gargoyles, kind of like um, Notre Dame in Paris. Here's a church called Bom Jesus. So up on a high mountain overlooking the town of Braga. Um, and this is at the second level. So when we first came here, we didn't know you could drive all the way up to it. So we started walking up these stairs. So these stairs go another similar number of flights down. And you walk up the stairs, and they've got these huts, again, with full size statues depicting the Passion. So uh, they have they had monasteries up here. This is a pretty huge site. So um, here's a church that was built on a rock. You got to be careful to get there at the right time, because when the tide starts coming in, if you're inside the church, you want to get out. You got to wait till the tide goes away, 12 hours from then. So um, this is another very, very elaborate church in the town of Ovar. And Ovar, unfortunately, is where COVID came into Portugal. So Portugal's hit very hard. Some of the Portuguese TSA people who saw the same six people saw every visitor coming into Lisbon, and they were hit by COVID, and the country was hit very, very hard. Um, Picture of Evora. So this is the town where we live. They call it the Venice of Portugal. So they give gondola rides up and down the creeks. So here's a picture of those. So again, this is within walking distance of where I lived. They have elaborate stonework on the sidewalks throughout the town. Um, Also known for salt fields right behind the university. Um, they have salt concentration ponds. So Vero started as a salt town, trying to harvest the salt to, um, do the salted cod thing. So salted cod is, I mean, it's completely preserved. It's dry. To cook it, you need to soak it in water for a couple of hours, well, for a day or so before you cook it. Going down to the beach, Aveiro. This is actually a little outside the town of Aveiro, but you go down to the ocean and very, very famous for these very, very picturesque, colorful homes. Here's the University of Coimbra, where I will have an appointment. I just got word today, by the way, that my appointment at the University of Vero has been extended. So I'll be going back there. We're going to have a big joint project between University of Vero, the University in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and a university in Spain along the Mediterranean. And here's the chemistry building. So Coimbra is the oldest university in Europe. Was started in the 1200s, moved back and forth to Lisbon a couple times, finally settled in Coimbra in the 1500s. And here's a little museum inside the chemistry building. So this is where I will have my own office and laboratory. Just a scene of Porto. So a lot of people visit Porto. Beautiful city. So this is actually taken, the one on the left, taken, there's an area where you go and eat and you're up a couple hundred feet overlooking the river. Um, and there's a bridge that goes over the river, again, built by one of the students of Eiffel. So you can take a gondola up and walk across the bridge and then back down. Um, and I think we're getting to the last slide. So this is a Harry Potter bookstore in Porto. A lot of people come here, but it's famous for being one of the scenes in some of the Harry Potter movies, and you can see how elaborate it is. And that's it. So there's so much more to Portugal. So come and see yourself. I could go on for 3 hours. So sorry, I went on for an hour and a half. Any questions?
I think that amazing. I would love to go see
You gotta go.
some of
You
those
gotta go.
sites.
Yep,
It's just wow. Because you don't hear about it, many of those at all.
that's right. And like I said, to get to the good stuff, you gotta have a car. So the tour buses don't go there. But the roads are just incredible. Google Map, I tell you, they know every dirt road in the country. So it's nice. You could drive up the mountains, you see this little dirt road, say that looks interesting, go down it. You hit home and it gets you home. So you don't have to
So,
worry about getting lost. So
are you allowed to go into the cave that has the prehistoric cave art?
yeah, those are run by tours. So you got to book that ahead of time. €2 to get in. Um, and yeah, you can go in there. And again, no, just discovered in the 70s. So nobody knows about that.
And I have another question. On the slates, you started off with the slates with the trilobites and everything else.
Yeah.
Has anybody looked at some of the roofs to see
You
if
still
there's
see
yeah.
trilobites. Yeah. I would imagine they're still there. But I haven't seen a roof. Well, I haven't crawled up on a roof to see them, but I mean, they split the slate open to make the roofs, and that's how they found the trilobites. So
I mean, I just a tour of the rooftops so you could just look around and see all the
yeah,
trilobites. That would be pretty cool. I'm sure
Yep.
there's got to be some
Yep. There's got
amazing,
to be some. Yep. So, and
yeah,
like I
on
said,
the other side too. I mean, if they put them on the other side,
the ones that
preserved
I
for all these.
yeah, the ones that I showed you again are some of the largest in the world, 3 foot long, inside that little museum run by a guy in his 20s and his father. And that's it. And you pay €2 to get in.
So on the dolmens, did they find any bones and artifacts, or have those been just totally
They have
stripped
left
free?
them, they have left them, unexcavated, but they've come in and take x-rays and yeah, they found some bones down there. So you could see that the Roman tombs have been raided.
Yeah, because I was going to say, if there's nobody around, I mean, what's to
Yeah.
stop somebody from raiding the tombs?
Yeah, but on the other hand, it is so isolated. And, I mean, like I said, the whole country was locked down during the Salazar years. So Portuguese are very, very homebound. So that's one of the things that I was very disappointed. I thought I'd come to the university and there'd be all kinds of university events on the weekends. They have a big music building. They have one concert, Christmas concert. That's it. The students empty out. They go home. Very, very family oriented. Uh,
So I have another question on the milepost, the Roman mileposts.
yeah.
I think of a milepost as one every mile, or
Um,
there, but in some of your photos, it
yeah.
showed like
They were
clusters of them outside.
Well, it's because at that particular site, the different rulers pick that site and they put their own mail post up to replace. They left the ones from the guy before him, but again, they span all the way going back to Caesar, Augustus, Adrian, you name it. So all the way up to Constantine was there.
Okay, so
Yep.
they didn't
Okay.
disrespect and remove the prior
Nope.
mile marker. They just put theirs up along the same area, a
Yeah.
few feet away.
Yep. So okay.
That's interesting.
Yep. Okay, doke. Well, I gotta get back to unloading furniture. So, so
Thank you so
Hey,
much. Thank you.
can I
That
ask
was
you one
very,
question really quick?
sure.
We're actually planning a trip to Portugal sometime early this year or next couple months, and I did some looking, and I ran across a lot of things that you showed. So thank you very much to give me a preview.